gentlemen, let us move on to the next item on the agenda. The moving power to use on the Liverpool and Manchester Railway. I assume that you have all read the report by Mr. Walker and Mr. Rainhill.
No, sir.
No? Well, Mr. Booth, would you kindly summarise it for us?
Certainly, Mr. Lawrence. There would seem to be two options for powering carriages along the rail tracks. Either a system of ropes to hold the wagons along, powered by fixed steam engines, or independent steam locomotives. In January this year, Mr. Walker, a highly respected civil engineer, and Mr. Rastrick visited the Bolton, Lee and Middleton railways, followed by nearly all the railways in the northeast of England to see which system works best. In Darlington, they came across American engineers from the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. Mr. Hackworth ensured that was able to assist Mr. Rastrick by giving him copies of the results of their experiment.
Yes, Mr. Booth, but there seems to be no definite conclusion in the report as to which is the best option for our railway.
Indeed, Mr. Sanders. The report suggests that we are contemplating for heavy traffic upon the opening of the line, then a fixed steam engine and rope haulage would be preferable on the grounds of economy, dispatch, safety and convenience.
On the other hand, it suggests that if a locomotive engines are to be used, then we should erect two fixed engines at the Sutton and Rainhill inclines to draw up the locomotives, goods wagons and carriages with ropes. The Rainhill engine in particular will enable us to judge whether to adopt this system of ropes throughout the line.
Yes, Mr. Walker and Mr. Rastrick were most impressed with this operation on the Brunton and Shields Railway.
Mr. Rastrick is at present constructing locomotives for the United States of America. And although he has maintained complete impartiality, I think this speaks volumes for the use of locomotives rather than fixed engines.
Well, it is now April and we have received a total of 6 reports and a large amount of correspondence. The board must make a decision.
Well, Mr. Stevenson and his son Robert have written in favour of adopting locomotives, refuting Mr. Walker and Mr. Rastrick's impartiality.
Gentlemen, we have to consider the future and not adopt a system that might inhibit the railway from benefiting from any further development of mechanical transport.
And the locomotive is the machine in which the most improvements are likely to be made.
Gentlemen. Mr. Walker, at the end of his report, has suggested that the company may offer a prize for the best locomotive submitted for the trials on the railway as an incentive to those who are currently involved in building steam locomotives.
Then shall we not take up this suggestion? We hope to open the railway next year, and a trial of locomotives will enable us to judge whether they are viable or whether we need to build static engines.
Yeah.
Very well. I have listened to the arguments and I have read all the correspondence. I would like to propose that we adopt Mr. Walker's suggestion and that a premium be awarded to the locomotive engine which displays the biggest improvements on those currently in use.
How much though? How much?
I agree. May I suggest a premium of £500?
Yes. May I ask for a show of hands? Thank you, gentlemen. The motion is carried. We shall place advertisements in the Liverpool Mercury and other papers on the 1st of May. That a premium of £500 will be awarded to a locomotive engine and that it will be decided on the improvement of those now in use and that the trial will be held on a 1.5 mile stretch of completed line 9 miles east of Liverpool at Rainhill.
Rainhill.
So, the trials are now set for October 29th.
line to find the best locomotive the engineers can design. But before that can happen, new rules must be writ. Let's go find the judges and hear what they see fit. Please, ladies and gentlemen, follow me. And please pray silence for the judges. Here from County Durham, mine owner, Nicholas Wood. John Kennedy owns a cotton mill in Manchester. Now that's good. John Raystrick hails from Worcestershire. Steam locos are his line. He sent one to America. It's called the Stourbridge Lion.
Gentlemen, we have now got a couple of days to witness the locomotive being tried, with the exception of Mr. Samuel. The heavy rain yesterday caused the rails to be clogged with mud, and while this is being cleared, I propose we use the time to discuss the conditions of the trial we're going to put the locomotives through.
I agree. I'll say unison.
Aye, I think Rocket and Novelty have shown us what we need to decide upon. The conditions of the trial published by the directors last April need to be clarified.
I think we need to be sure that the weight of each locomotive is known, because if it's too heavy, it might damage the train and the rail will suffer.
Aye, well, keep to the original weight stipulated then. No more than 6 tons, including the water in the boiler. And if there are 4 wheels, then the weight should be no more than 4 tons an hour.
From what we've seen so far, no locomotive has more than 4 wheels, so the weight is to be no more than 4 tons and a half.
Well, we have the weighing machine available near the starting point. So may I propose that the locomotive be checked with its full complement of water at 8 o'clock in the morning. Wagons are then to be attached with stones to give a load of no more than 3 times the weight of the locomotive.
Oh, and the water should be cold and no fire lit. The amount of fuel needed to enable 35 miles to be travelled should be weighed and put in a tender, with sufficient water for the same distance poured into the car.
35 miles should be enough to assess what consumption would be if the locomotive had travelled one journey between Liverpool and Manchester.
We now need to have the fire lit and the time taken for getting up steam and the amount of fuel used noted.
Right, and we need to take into account the weight of the tender and its load as part of the load assigned to the locomotive.
Yes, but it's only fair that locomotives such as Novelty that carry their own fuel and water should be allowed a proportionate deduction from their load.
That's all right.
I agree on that.
Now the engine with the wagons attached should be pushed to the starting point by the Stourbridge, and as soon as the steam pressure is reached, it should set off on the trial.
I shall take a notebook and write down all the details and times that the engines pass the first marker post near the grandstand.
So the course is marked to give distance of 1 mile and 3/4 each way, with 1/8 of a mile at each end for stopping and starting. The distance between marker posts 1 and 2 is 1 mile and a half, so we can see the full speed the engine is capable of.
But that means the locomotive will travel a distance of 30 miles at full speed, and this bit must be at an average of over 10 miles an hour.
The locomotive will have made 10 trips, so a fresh supply of fuel and water needs to be available. And as soon as it's all ready, it will be pushed to the starting post and the trial begins again. The results will show which is the most economic regarding fuel and water consumption, pulling power and speed, and will be a worthy test to find which locomotive is best suited to being employed on the railway.
I think some refreshments are called for.
So, new rules have been set. The trials can begin. the competitors gather and the spectators roll in. Now let's move forward in time through a week's trial of skill and listen to some gossip of feats good and ill. We need now, ladies and gentlemen, to find the engineer's good ladies, and I believe they are across the road near a place called Jane Court. Follow me, please. Gentlemen, we have moved forward in time through weeks' trial of skill, and now let's listen to some gossip of feats good and ill. We are now at the Ship Inn, all cosy and new. Some ladies are here. Oh, and the landlady too.
Hello everyone. Have the trials finished for today then?
Yes.
Oh, were they good?
Brilliant.
Oh, well, if you'd like to wait here, the stage coaches will be leaving for Warrington, Liverpool and Manchester within the hour. Oh, I haven't introduced them, have I? First of all, I'd like to introduce Mr. Timothy Ackworth.
Wife?
Mrs. Timothy Ackworth. Mrs. Robert Stevenson and her daughter-in-law. That's Mrs. George Stevenson, sorry. And her daughter-in-law, Mrs. Robert Stevenson.
What a week it has been! Yes, we have had some treats, haven't we? I couldn't get over the crowds last Tuesday. There must have been more than 10,000 people. It was a good idea to build a grandstand to get a better view. The bridge was so crowded.
The landlady of the Railway Tavern must have earned herself a fortune. She set aside a private room for all the gentlemen and served them with food.
It was a shame about the weather. Last Tuesday was so sunny, then Wednesday turned wet, and the rails became clogged with mud.
Oh, I was so proud of my husband's engine, gleaming in the sunshine with its bright yellow paintwork and white chimney dazzling everybody. They do say it went up to 18 miles an hour, faster than any stagecoach.
Wasn't Rocket entered by your son, Robert, and Henry Booth?
Yes, Robert did all the construction, with some help from George from time to time, and I believe Henry made some modifications which are doing very well.
The London engine novelty ran that day too. How bright and trim she looked. Her copper boiler shining like a new tin. And when she reached speeds of almost 30 miles an hour, how the crowd cheered!
Oh, look! Here's Caroline Blaithwaite. Her husband was one of the designers of the novelty. Hello, Caroline.
Mrs. Stevenson, Mrs. Hackworth. What a pleasure it is to meet you all again.
And how is your husband's locomotive performing? Were the repairs that he did successful on Saturday? I do believe that the novelty is the favourite of the crowds.
Unfortunately, the pipe failed again. I think he and his partner, Mr. Erickson, are considering withdrawing tonight. It's a shame, as you say. The crowds were impressed by their appearance and were thrilled having rides of her at 30 miles an hour.
Mr. Bustall's engine didn't fare any better, I believe.
No, she hardly beat walking pace. I hear Mr. Birstall spent days in the workshop trying one thing and then another. He blames it all on the men who loaded the engine onto the wagon to transport it here. Do you know it fell off in Prescott?
Oh, we heard that things had gone sadly awry. It's the same with my husband's locomotive, Sans Pareil. He has spent a fortune of his own money on the machine, only to be let down time and time again. There was very little time to test her before coming to Rainhill. There were all manner of leaks. Timothy had been trying to seal the joints, but he has been out of temper for days.
But Samurai did run yesterday.
Sadly, all went wrong. Timothy worked through the night, and the judges agreed that she could take part. She performed faultlessly for almost 50 minutes. And to and fro she went, to Lee Green. Then, on her 8th run, whoosh! A plug came out of the firebox, and the water pump failed. So that was the end of the trial.
But did your husband not ask for a retrial?
Yes, he sent a letter to the judges, but they declined his request.
So, things looking good for your rocket then, Mrs. Stevenson. She performed very well, and I believe even gave rides up and down the Western Incline. So, no need for any fixed engines or ropes then.
We had a moment of hilarity when Sans Pareil had her wagons filled with spectators who refused to get down. William Goland, our driver, just uncoupled the wagons and set off without them. They were proper angry, but the crowd in the grandstand was delighted.
Ladies, if you would like to go into the yard, the stage coaches for Liverpool and Manchester are waiting for you. Off you go.
Thank you, ladies. Now, ladies and gentlemen, come with me to a fair machine. Rocket is its name, where we meet the Stevensons, who are masters of their game. This way, please. Pray, let's hope the Stevensons can spare us a moment. Stevensons, we have some guests for you. See the rockets. Hey, Robert. It looks like we have some visitors come to see our locomotive. Welcome to you all. I'm George Stevenson.
Hello.
And this is my son Robert. And as you can see, we have a fine machine to show you.
It was built at our works in Newcastle upon Tyne by our very dedicated workmen.
You're no finer lads in the land. Yeah, Robert was in charge of building the rocket. I was away constructing the Liverpool and Manchester Railway. We did exchange letters on certain technical points, but the task of constructing it was largely down to him.
We started working on the rocket in April, and by the end of August, all was ready to begin testing in September. We took her to the Killingworth colliery, and she reached speeds of 8 miles an hour on an incline, and 12 miles an hour on the level. Well, after some modifications, she was dismantled and taken by horse and cart to Carlisle and then sent on a steamboat to Liverpool.
Right. And would you believe, while all this was going on, he still had time to get married?
I think everybody would rather hear more about the locomotive than my marriage father. Here in Liverpool, we had a tender made, and we painted rockets yellow and black because they're the colours of the fastest stagecoaches. We also named a rocket to give an impression of speed. We have to keep retouching the paintwork because even during the trials and there was much amusement one day when Robert Stanning he got his hand stuck to the paintwork on the tender. It was still tacky.
Why don't you tell them something about how rocket works?
Aye. Well, a locomotive needs coke and water. Coke because it produces less smoke than coal, and water to make steam that moves the engine. Here in the tender is the coke, and the cask, that's where the water is. Now down here is what we call the firebox, and we use coke to light a fire in here that heats the water to make steam. A pipe brings the water from the cask to the boiler, here.
And this is where we are indebted to Mr. Boo for suggesting we can make steam more effectively if we use lots of small tubes instead of one large one. Yeah, no other locomotive has this way of making steam.
Well, this enables us to keep steaming long after the other locomotives have to slow down and wait for pressure to build up again. You see here are the pistons which drive the wheels. Steam pressure in that cylinder up there, it pushes down the pistons down, and that makes the wheels, they have to rotate.
The final thing I would like to point out is the chimney, as this is where all the heat and smoke, if there is any, is discharged from the fire. At the bottom here is another important piece of equipment, that's the eduction or blast pipe. This takes exhaust steam from the cylinder to the chimney and helps to draw the fire and make it burn better.
Now, last Thursday, Rocket
reached speeds of up to 16 miles an hour, with wagons attached, and performed faultlessly. On Saturday, the novelty broke down, and we gave Rocket a run with her tender, and she reached 30 miles an hour.
Such speeds are unheard of. I wonder what the future will hold. We best get on with oiling her, making her ready for this evening. So thank you all for coming to look at Rocket and for listening to us. Thank you.
Now the trials are over. We should really see who's won. Might it be George Stevenson, together with Robert, his son? With Novelty and Saint-Péray, Perseverance too, all failing to perform, I think you have a clue. Ladies and gentlemen, today I have received a report from Mr. Wood, Mr. Raystrick and Mr. Kennedy regarding the locomotive trials held recently at Rainhill. What an event it was! And I understand engineers from all over the world were in attendance and much was written in the press. May I congratulate the judges on a most comprehensive report, and now I will briefly, yes briefly, make a summary of their findings. Mr. Burstall of Edinburgh brought his locomotive Perseverance, which unfortunately fell from a wagon on which it was being transported to Rainhill and suffered irreparable damage. Mr. Hackworth of Darlington had a worthy contender with his locomotive Saint-Péray, but it suffered from water leakage in the boiler, and then a fusible plug blew out when the water pump failed. Yes. This locomotive attained speeds of over 20 miles an hour, but consumed a great deal of fuel. Braithwaite and Ericsson's Novelty performed well at the start and was regarded by many as a most elegant machine, and it amazed the crowds by its speed. Unfortunately, a small pipe in the boiler exploded and had to be sent to Prescott for repair. Mr. Braithwaite and Mr. Ericsson then decided to take the locomotive to pieces to effect further repairs, with the result that on the next trial many joints leaked and the locomotive came to a stop. Mr. George Stevenson, Mr. Robert Stevenson and Mr. Henry Booth joint entry Rocket did not break down and gave a very fine performance. Therefore, the directors have decided that the premium of £500 should be awarded to these gentlemen.
The board has also decided to award Mr. Burstall the sum of £25 for the acknowledgement of his willingness to take part in the trials, and will also offer to buy Saint-Péray from Mr. Hackworth, subject to negotiations with him. The Novelty will also remain on the railway for further tests and modifications, and the board is hopeful that the railway will purchase these locomotives too.
Thank you.
3 cheers for the Rocket! Hip hip!
Hooray!
Hip hip!
Hooray!
Hip hip! Hooray! So here at Rainhill in October 1829, a unique event was held that changed the world. Steam locomotives spread railways across countries. Travel was speeded up. Continents were opened up to settlers. The Industrial Revolution spread rapidly. Mail, food and
goods could be delivered more efficiently. People could travel greater distances on their holidays in less time. Clocks became set at a standard time. And at Rainhill, for the first time in the history of the world, men and women could travel at a speed faster than a running horse. Crowds were amazed as speeds of over 30 miles an hour were achieved. But today, regular travel by train can reach over 200 miles an hour. What a legacy, ladies and gentlemen! Thank you!